This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in, folks, to another edition of Open Mic Night. I am your host, Noah Taluki, and on today's episode, we're going to bring you part 2 of the Dave Shula interview that took place 2 weeks ago. I provided you guys part 1 last week. We're going to go with part 2 this time, and part 2 talks a lot more about his time away from the Miami Dolphins. He talks about his first couple of years in Dallas as the offensive coordinator and Troy Aikman's first quarterbacks coach and OC, as well as his time as a head coach for the Cincinnati Bengals before getting into the Shula Industries, the business side of the Shula family, and then why he decided to go back into coaching at his alma mater of Dartmouth. So hopefully everybody had a great weekend out there. And just want to let everybody know I am in Florida right now with our John Carroll baseball team. Big shout out to them over near Orlando, a little bit south of there in a town called Kissimmee. They're playing 8 games in 6 days at all kinds of different fields, a little bit south of Orlando, in Lakeland as well. They're actually one of the games they're playing Albion, the D3 school just west of Jackson in Michigan. They're playing them at Henley Field, which is actually where our Tigers used to play their spring training before they moved over to Joker Marchant Stadium in Lakeland as well. So it's going to be a really, really interesting time, and I'm already having a lot of fun down here, already catching a lot of sunshine, and it feels really, really good to be down here. That is for sure. But for today's episode, I just wanted to air for you part 2 of the awesome Dave Shula interview that took place 2 weeks ago. So here it is now, only on Open Mic Night. So later on after Miami, I think a lot of people forget this, that you were the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach for the Cowboys in 1989 and 90, first 2 seasons with Jimmy Johnson. Now, was this situation something, did you ever want to leave Miami? Did you just want to stay there as an assistant for a long time? Or, did you have a desire to move up in the coaching ranks?
We were having so much success. It just kind of came to me. In 1980, in fact, after that 85 season, it became down to me and Buddy Ryan to be named the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. You could go back and look at that. I was 26 years old. Wow. Probably the best thing that never happened to me. And that the Bears go on to win and Coach Ryan got the job. So it started then, and then, over time I picked up steam. And then when Coach Johnson, who had been at the University of Miami, he got the job with the Cowboys. His defensive coordinator at Miami was a guy named Dave Wanstead, who my dad had hired to be our linebacker coach for the Dolphins. And I just remember the date. It was 33 days later that Jimmy gets the job with the Cowboys, and he brings Dave back as the defensive coordinator. And Dave and I had struck up a friendship, and Jimmy wanted to have some NFL experience on his staff, and so he gave me the opportunity to go as the quarterback or as a coordinator, and so it was something I was comfortable in Miami, but having an opportunity like that and to get out on my own, at that point, I felt I was ready to do it, and we had some challenges, to say the least. We only won 1 game that 1989, but Jimmy, was a brilliant personnel evaluator and a brilliant motivator, and had very good coaches with him. And over time, our first draft pick was Troy Aikman, Hall of Famer. Also took later that summer in what was called the supplemental draft. They had Steve Walsh. We took as the number 1 pick for the next year's draft. And that was interesting, trying to, Troy Aikman comes in my office. He goes, "Coach, you just took another quarterback with the number 1 pick for next year. What's going on here?" So handling that. But, it started to lay the foundation for those great Dallas teams that, won, I guess, at least three Super Bowls. I know Jimmy, I think, won 2. And then when he left, Barry Switzer came in with that same group and won 1. But so we won 1 game the first year. And then the second season, we were actually 7-7 going into the last 2 games. That if we had won one of those 2 games, we would have gone to the playoffs and would have been the greatest turnaround in NFL history. And we weren't able to do that. Troy got hurt. Steve, we had traded to, I think the Bears. I think it was the Chicago Bears. So we were down to, our third string quarterback and we had some other injuries and going against some really good defenses and Buddy Ryan's Eagles with Reggie White and then went down to Atlanta, both road games, and then went to Atlanta to play Jerry Glanville and his grid splits defense with Deion Sanders. And so we didn't win either game. So we ended up losing. And so I ended up in Cincinnati the next year with Coach White. So it was another great learning experience with great people.
So I know that 1989 season, you were talking about it earlier when you drafted Aikman and then they got Walsh in there. A little bit of a quarterback controversy because Steve Walsh was the quarterback for Jimmy Johnson at Miami, and there was the controversy. So there was like some of the coaches believed in Aikman, others believed in Walsh. Which side were you on when it came to that battle?
Well, and you're right. There was all that. And as I mentioned, Troy came into my office and I forgot to ask, or mention that, oh yeah, by the way, Steve, I think they won a national championship with Steve as quarterback. And, but it became evident early on that Troy was just an exceptional talent. And Steve, was a great college player, but he did not have the physical skills that Troy had. And now mentally he was sharp as they come. And I know he's coaching now, I think up in Minnesota in high school. But he, it was very evident early on that Troy was going to be the guy. And that's why Jimmy, ended up trading Steve away, and the rest is history.
Jimmy later on actually succeeded your father in Miami as the coach of the Dolphins in 1995 after he retired. What was your reaction once you heard that Jimmy was going to be succeeding your father in Miami? Jimmy had walked away from the game on his own terms from the Cowboys. There was some friction, I guess, in the relationship with Jerry Jones there after a while. And as Jerry became more involved, and then Jimmy he loved South Florida and had a place in the Keys. And he was, I'm not sure if he was with Fox, Sports at that time or not, but he made it very he dropped a lot of hints, publicly that he would love to have had that, the Dolphins job. If he was going to, I think he was framing it as if I'm going to come back to coach, I want it to be in Miami because I love it here so much. And so it wasn't that big of a surprise, when he was named the coach. And of course, he certainly had a track record deserving of, another opportunity if he wanted it. And then, so after, as you mentioned before, became the head coach of the Bengals, 92 to 96. You were the youngest head coach in the league at the time. So finally, it was between you and Buddy Ryan originally with the Eagles, and then the Bengals took a chance on a young coach in you. So did you want to be a head coach at that point, or was it just something that the opportunity was granted to you?
I thought about it as something I would, I could see myself in that role. But it wasn't something that I was always, I was shooting for. I was the receiver coach with the Bengals in 1991 with Sam White. And I think we went 3-13. And at the end of the season, Mike Brown decided to make a change at head coaching position. And, I remember sitting with they had some great coaches on that staff, Dick LeBeau and Jim McNally and Coach Anderson, the running back coach, and just guys that had been there and were very, had been there in their Super Bowl years. The Bengals were in the Super Bowl in '88 after that season. Jim Anderson, the running back coach, and I'm looking at those guys and thinking, well, which of you guys are going to go? Asking them, which of you guys are going to go in there for the job? I thought they were, very well deserving, and for whatever reason, they came to me and said, well, we think you ought to try, go for it. and then, so I was prepared to put my name in the hat. And just as I was going to go down to Mike Brown's office, he said, the secretary said for me. So just how it worked out. But another a great opportunity at a young age, Mike Brown taking a leap of faith in me and another great learning experience in my life and, my family. We made great friends in Cincinnati, many of which we still have today. And our boys, love their time there. Cincinnati's a wonderful, wonderful place to raise a family. And, we didn't have the success that we needed to on the field, which eventually caught up with me. But, I look back now at, the lessons that I learned at a very young age, the confidence it gave me to handle situations in my next life, so to speak, and with Shula Steakhouses and running our franchising company. And I was, given many talks over the years of how the fundamental things that you learn as a football coach, being a part of a team sport, how they transfer into being successful into the regular business world, and having goals and the understanding the hard work necessary and the methodology needed to go ahead and achieve those goals, and having each other's back, what that means, and there's no I in the word team, and holding people accountable, sticking with the game plan or your playbook, but, and changing around the edges, that you have to do as a company, stay true to your core, but also continue to change as the world changes. And those are things that, we were able to apply in Shula Steakhouses over the 22 years that I was there, and really helped us, become, one of the top restaurant companies in the United States during that time.
October 2nd, 1994, a really, really big day for you and your father. The first time in NFL history that you as the head coach for the Bengals squared off against your father, of course, head coach of the Dolphins. Just what was that whole week like leading up to that game? And then, at the end when unfortunately you guys lost to the Dolphins, what that feeling at midfield with the handshake after?
Yeah, it's a lot more media attention, and then, you get into, you're so busy as it is, getting ready with the game plan and handling your players and practices and such, they're very so much caught up in that. But I do remember during the national anthem, standing on the sideline and looking across the field and seeing my dad standing over there and thinking, this is pretty neat. But then quickly, back to reality when, who won the coin flip and so forth. And then you get into the game and then, it was afterwards emotional for me. He is, it was who he was, and I'm trying to become somebody that, keeping my job. And, we had that game, I get them confused because they beat us the next year too. But I think it was that game. We had the lead, kick a field goal to take the lead at the end, and then Marino has too much time, and ends up. And there were some controversial calls there. We thought we had him sacked for a safety right in the first play, and then caught a ball out of bounds that if they had read replay that would have been changed. That was like a 3rd and 15, and some other things. All the emotions kind of came flooding out after that game. And, but it was a special time too. I look back on it now and, see some great pictures of us hugging each other. And I knew, me being a dad now too, and just that emotion that I feel, and watching, our sons and grandsons are now, and we have a granddaughter coming, anything that they do and how vested you are in that. And I'm sure, it was tough on my dad, and I know really tough on my siblings. My mom had passed away a few years before, but it's emotional time.
Yeah, and I know especially with your mom, Aunt Dorothy, who passed away for breast cancer, but I know she was definitely the rock of the family for sure, especially with your your father at practice and all that, and really holding on to with all the other siblings, taking them to different places as well. But what kind of an impact did your mother have, on your life and your siblings?
It's immeasurable. I mean, she was, generationally, and I guess it probably hadn't really changed much as far as coaches go. I mean, your time demands are such that you're just not around physically that much. So, I described her at her memorial service as being, like the great communicator, is a term that I know they use for Ronald Reagan, but my mom was certainly that, in that we knew that our dad cared. And she made sure that he was up to speed, good or bad, with what we were doing. And then, her, she was just always there for us. We knew that she was our number one cheerleader, no matter what we were doing. And then also held us accountable to do, the things we needed to do around the house and be good students and be good people and good people of faith and leading us in that way. So she was our rock. And it was, very sad. I think, I'll be 63 here pretty soon. And, she was 57 when she passed away. And I think of all the great, experiences that she's missed because, not being here physically. We know she's been watching over us up in heaven, but it was sad.
Two things I really admire about your father is really one, about how grounded he was with his faith. I believe, he went to mass every single day, very devout Catholic in that sense. And then also, his playing the game with integrity. He played in the era in the 1970s where there was guys like John Madden and the Raiders who were notorious for, they were saying cheating is encouraged and all that. But then here's your father. He wanted to gain an edge, but he never did it with cheating. So what was it about him that really he stayed grounded with, his faith, as well as the, not being able to cheat to gain an edge?
Yeah, it came to how he was raised, with his parents and then, the Jesuit education that he had and making his life about other people and doing things the right way, the golden rule, treating people like you'd want to be treated yourself and having, believing that, your integrity is everything. And so that did not change no matter what he was doing. He wasn't, people would ask me, what was your dad like at, because I worked with him for so long. What was he like in the office versus being at home? And he wasn't any different. He was a stern guy, but also enjoyed a good joke and a laugh, but not inappropriately. And he also had a social consciousness to him. And this is something, Noah, that people really don't know about him. And there's two examples that some people know this, but so for example, in 1970, he goes down to coach the Dolphins, and the Civil Rights Act didn't pass until 1964. And Miami was the South. I mean, there was still at that time, a black beach was Virginia Beach, and there was still signs, whites only, and water fountains for whites and blacks, and it was very much the South. So he didn't do this on purpose, but he just did it because that's how he was raised and what he believed. So he just roomed his players by position. And that meant there were some black guys rooming with some white guys. And Larry Little was the one that mentioned this to me and to others, that what that meant and how that resonated in the South Florida community in helping people overcome, racial prejudice and that, was something that he never talked about it, that's why he did it. He just did it because that's the right thing to do, just like Paul Brown had done in the 1950s with the Cleveland Browns and in the 1940s. And you just treated people as they were, not by the color of their skin, so that was important. And then there's another story that I've heard over the years that involved a player named Mar Fleming. And Mar Fleming was a great veteran player that Dolphins brought in as a tight end from the Green Bay Packers. And he was an African-American and a very free-spirited guy. And it wasn't public back then, but I'm sure he was, a person of, was gay. But nobody really ever talked about that, right? But he goes into my dad's office one day and he's got 2 earrings on. Or no, he has 1 earring on. He had 1 earring on. And I think he was trying to, in a subtle way, make a point about that, that he was nobody was wearing earrings at that, this is 1970, 71 or something like that, right? And he walks into my dad's office and he goes, hey, Coach, he goes, see my earring here? And what do you think? My dad looks at him and he goes, yeah, I just wonder where your other one is. But what that implied to me and in the retelling of this story was that be who you are. I don't care. Just be who you are, and be a good teammate and that's, none of my business. And that to me was, extraordinary also. And again, not something that he ever talked about, he was on a mission for pushing for, equal rights for everybody. But in his own way, he did. He was treating people for who they are and how they could help the team and so forth. So those are, a couple of things about him that very little known stories that I've always have stuck with me and, about, the kind of person that he was and how that resonated in everything that he did.
A couple more questions for Dave Shula, the son of the winningest coach in NFL history, Don Shula. Another thing I really admire about your father, Dave, is that he, in his 33 years of coaching, of being a head coach, he only had 2 losing seasons. And, he really withstood the test of time and just remained consistent for so long. How did he remain consistent for so long? And he won in every way imaginable, too, by running, passing with backup quarterbacks, all that as well. Just how did he do it?
Yeah, great question. A couple things. One, he paced himself. He worked hard, but he didn't do it to a point where he could not keep up that pace during the season and for year after year. In other words, time in the office. I mean, he would get in, he'd go to mass, as you mentioned, at 7 a.m, and then he'd be in the office by 7:30, and he'd be home. I don't think he got home much after 11 o'clock at night. 4 or 5 days a week. So he had 6-7 hours sleep. He watched what he ate, and he liked to exercise, and he understood, and believed in getting away from the game in the off season and refreshed himself. So from that standpoint, I think that was one reason he was successful. And then also, he believed in being a lifelong learner, in that, the game was going to change. He was on the competition committee, so he knew how the game was changing. And was a big part of seeing how the game needed to change, because at the end of the day, it's the entertainment business, and what do people want to pay money to watch on television or come to sit in a seat and be a season ticket holder, and knew that the game had to change. So as the rules changed and it became more evident that being a strong passing team was the way to go, well, he found the ways in parts of his playbook that emphasized that. And then he later, certainly when I wasn't there, would make changes that ended up being staying current with the game and staying ahead of other people. The Dolphins back in the early 70s, they were the first team to do a 3-4 defense. It was a innovation of Bill Arnsparger and my dad. So that, one of the many things that little move we made with Nat Moore against the 85 Bears. I'm sure people saw that and started thinking about opening up the game to where it is today, where first play of a game you go, 5 wide, nobody in the backfield, the quarterback had shotgun, it's just like how things have changed. And he was, as I said, a lifelong learner and knew the importance of continuing to do that.
Now, are those the reasons, some of those reasons that you just mentioned, are those some of the reasons or some of the things that you still see in the game today that, has your father's name on it, basically? Because you look at other coaches in the past, Vince Lombardi, he's got the Lombardi Trophy. You got Bill Walsh with his West Coast offense. Tom Landry created the 4-3 defense. A lot of these coaches have sort of something that is still in the league today that they're associated with. Are these some of the things that you see in the game that is still associated with your father today?
Well, certainly the 3-4 defense and how that's, used so widely today by many teams, both college and pro. But he was never labeled, as being a football genius, so to speak. Right. So you mentioned some of the coaches, the Hall of Fame coaches that have, a trophy or an offense named after him. And I don't know that I've never heard of anything being associated with my dad, in that way, other than the way he went about doing things. And the fact that he still has the only team that went undefeated, and he's got more wins than anybody else ever had. So, you just look at how he did it. And preaching to his guys, it's about the team. It's not about, the individual, so to speak. And, I mentioned earlier, our son Chris coaches with the Rams, and I've been fortunate to go out and he and Sean McVay played football together at Miami of Ohio. And, Sean spent every spring break at our house. And we've known he and his family for many, many years, and what great people. But, when you walk in their facility, it says, and it was on a lot of their Super Bowl, all over their team hotel. It's we, not me. And promoting, selflessness and playing for each other. And that's something that, I'm sure he, at some point in his career, he picked up in conversation with my dad, when he was, playing at Miami of Ohio, and they would go over to my dad, our son's grandfather's house and hang out. And Sean would, love to sit and talk football with me and my dad. And I'm sure that resonated somewhere about how you have to, have a team of humble guys that care about playing for each other, not about themselves, no matter how talented they are. And the Rams certainly did that.
So I want to talk to you about something that you alluded to earlier, and it's the whole business aspect, the Shula Steakhouse. You got involved with it a lot after your coaching career, wasn't it, for over 20 years as the president of Shula Steakhouses. Where did the idea come from to get to franchise restaurants after your father retired?
So it started with the Graham family. So the Grahams built a community. They're real estate developers that developed a community in Northwest Dade County, Miami-Dade County, called Miami Lakes. And that's where my dad chose to live when he first moved to Miami, because it was close to the Orange Bowl, it was close to the airport, and it was close to where they were going to practice in his offices were at Biscayne College. And great community, and has won many awards over the years. If you Google it, Miami Lakes, and it was what do they call it? A new town concept was that you live, work, sleep, play, eat, recreate, worship, all in the same community. And it was designed such with they use like a snail shell to design some of the roads, and only one road cut through the entire town, a north-south road. So that kept it from being a place where you just drive through, and had real character. And it still is a wonderful community to this day. So anyways, as part of the Graham Enterprises, they had a commercial real estate division, and they had warehousing to restaurants and hotels and retail section, and then they developed apartments to estate homes. Anyway, so they and they had a golf course in the community, and so one of their director of food and beverage decided to try to make that restaurant that serviced the golf club and one of the hotels a destination restaurant where people would come from all over, get to see Miami Lakes, and because of the name of the restaurant. So his idea was to theme it make it a steakhouse, because the Grahams had also been raising Angus cattle since the early 1950s and were one of the original members of the American Angus Association. And they knew that this is well before, fast food places started to, advertise that they sold Angus burgers. You know what I mean? So this is way back, and this is now in 1988, 89. And so they, and then they wanted to have a hook, a name. And at this point, now this is 1989, the Dolphins had, won their 2 Super Bowls in the 70s, and my dad had, made a name for himself and so forth. So they approached my dad about putting his name on it at Shula's Steakhouse and serve Angus beef and the best cuts and high quality. And my dad at first said no, because and my mom wasn't going to let him hang out in the bar and sign autographs, with me and my 4 siblings, right? So, but they were smart in designing a concept that was enduring, would stand on its own as a restaurant concept, but with a great name on it, and in South Florida. And that was their, early vision. And then it got to the point where it was so successful that they decided to duplicate it in other locations and come up with other concepts, not quite as formal and different price points, but still have quality as, number one, and be able to stand on its own as a restaurant. And, but with a great name on it. So at one point we had 36 restaurants around the country. Our business model became a franchising model, very similar to coaching, where you have a playbook and get people to buy into your ideas, and then you help them implement those ideas, and right from design to standard operating procedures and menu and so forth. And that was, when I made the transition from coaching, that it very quickly became evident to me is, how similar it was to teaching a rookie the playbook and then getting them to perform and holding them accountable and showing them how to, stay on top of things and so forth in all different ways, and marketing and design and service, standards and how you cook your steaks, and more importantly, the type of quality of food that you served, and those things all became very important. So it was a great transition from being a football coach.
And then
that's how it started.
And then all of a sudden in 2018, you decided to come back to coaching after a 20-plus year absence to your alma mater of Dartmouth. So why was it that you decided after all those years to finally come back?
We had I decided we had brought somebody in to run the day-to-day, and I was still part of it, and still to this day I'm part of Shula's on the board and one of the owners, and I mentioned I had played with our buddy Stevens as a head coach here at Dartmouth, and we had stayed very close over the years, and I'd stayed close to the program, and he had mentioned to me in January that it looked like his receiver coach was going to leave, and it just I don't know, it stuck in my head. And so when I think in February or something, he said, yeah, he did. He left. And I said to him, hey, what would you think if I put my name in the hat? And because I've been thinking about this, and I missed the game. I always loved coaching. I love Dartmouth. I love New England and New Hampshire and then my wife being a Dartmouth grad, and her parents are a couple hours down the road. They're 95 and 96 now. So it all was kind of, fit like a puzzle to me. And Buddy's a smart guy. When I asked him, he goes, well, what does Leslie think? And my wife. And I said, well, I haven't asked her yet, because if you're not interested, I'm not going to go and talk to her about it. And he goes, well, why don't you go see what she thinks? And so she was great. And then, our sons, by this time, they're in their 30s, and they're out living their, on their own and all over the country. And so she said, yeah, I'm good as long as we keep a home in Florida. So we have a home in Jupiter, Florida. And then, it worked out. And I've been blessed. And Coach Stevens had built a great culture, great program. That I came into a good situation, and we played 3 seasons. We missed one because of COVID in 2020, but we're 27-3. We just went back to back. We've been 9-1 each of the last 3 years, and we just went back to back championships. Which, as I mentioned earlier, Dartmouth has won more championships than anybody else in the Ivy League with number 20. But the players that we have here and the staff are just. It's just a pleasure. It's not like work, it's a pleasure to go to work every day and be around these guys and what they stand for and what Coach Stevens stands for. And I've noticed the difference. In fact, I'm going to do a clinic on Friday and talk about the difference between coaching in college and coaching in the NFL. And it's Lauren's 1st and 10, by the way, if anybody's interested in tuning in. And I know they're recording these, and you can pick them up, buy a package and pick up not just mine, but all different topics. Anyways, and it's all for charity. The difference is that I. Coaching in college, you get the opportunity to help young men become. Go into real life and change their lives. And it's been just fantastic.
I find it interesting too, as you just mentioned that, how there's so many players, at least back, like when your father coached and even before, where, the head coach had just such a great impact on their life, even at the professional level. So, and I don't want to speak for any of the coaches today, but it just doesn't seem like you don't hear as many of those stories, I guess, as maybe you used to, with the head coach of an NFL team having, such a great impact, kind of like with Don and Vince Lombardi and all those other coaches.
Yeah. And what's changed, Noah, is free agency. There aren't many stories of guys playing more than 4 or 5 years in one place. And that's just the nature of the game. And, players being able to go out and on the free market and make the money, well, you're going to lose the long-term relationship side of it. So I think that's part of the.
Final question for you, Dave, here on the Open Mike Night podcast. Your brother Mike, been a longtime coach in the NFL, former head coach at University of Alabama before Nick Saban, the head coach before him. And then you mentioned Chris, your son, with the linebackers coach of the Rams, just winning the Super Bowl. How special is it for you and the family to still have Shula's in the NFL?
Oh, it's great, and you know why? I know it's because they're doing what they have a passion for, and getting the opportunity to do it at the highest level. And we'd be proud of our son Chris, as I am our other 2 sons. Just for being, the kind of people that they are. And it just so happens that Chris is, an NFL coach that just won a Super Bowl. And the same with my brother Mike. And I'm as proud as our 3 sisters that have gone on and been, great citizens themselves and the roles that they've chosen in life. And that's what it's about. And it just happens to be that they have a passion for coaching and it's going to be out in the public forum. But just really proud of them as people and what they stand for, and then of course able to revel in their success when they go to Super Bowls and now just have won one.
Yeah, I'm Chris now with the 3rd ring in the Shula family, the 2 with Don in the early 70s, and now finally after a long absence, almost 50 years, Shula finally gets a Super Bowl ring. But Dave Shula, the current wide receivers coach for Dartmouth, former head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, and the son of the winningest coach in NFL history, 347, Don Shula. Dave, thank you so much for joining me. Really, really appreciate it. Your time.
Oh, my pleasure. No, take care. Good to speak with you and your audience, and wish you all the best.
And I want to thank Dave Shula again for coming on to the Open Mike Night podcast. And let me tell you, folks, this was one of the best interviews I think I've ever had on Open Mike Night. I mean, Dave's presence, his willingness to tell stories, his detail in his stories, how passionate he still is for the game of football and the Shula family is something that really, really resonated with me in these interviews. And, particularly with this second part, I think a lot of people don't understand that Dave was the offensive coordinator for Troy Aikman in Dallas his first 2 seasons there. So coming off, remember, Tom Landry, one of the cornerstone pieces of the modern day NFL, a guy that's up there with Don Shula and Vince Lombardi as one of the greatest coaches of all time. This is a guy that came in as offensive coordinator for a whole new staff that had to replace Tom Landry after 29 years. So, coming in with Jimmy Johnson and all that, how difficult that was, I thought that was a great story. And the building blocks that they had there with the drafting and Jimmy Johnson's whole story, I thought that was wonderful. The Cincinnati Bengals, I just did not pan out, but Dave, as always, seems to just have a big smile on his face and moved on with his next adventure, which was running the Shula Enterprises for over 25 years and really building that franchise into the global power that we know and the global presence that it has today. That is for sure. Make sure to check out all the other great content on the podcast network. As always, Doc and Jock, the Michigan podcast, and the Fan Report, all great podcasts to listen to. Also, John Macaroon doing a fantastic job with his coverage of Sports Illustrated Lions. I know the Lions and the NFL just had their combine. A lot of big NFL news coming out today here on a Tuesday as we record, with Russell Wilson being traded to Denver, Aaron Rodgers appearing to be staying in Green Bay. We're going to talk all about that the next coming weeks, but I just thought I wanted to give you this little part 2 of the Dave Shula interview as I enjoy the sun down here in Florida. But make sure to check out all of John Macaroon's great content. He will keep you as updated as he can on all what is going on with the Lions. But thank you again, folks, for tuning in. And a big hello and goodbye, I guess, from the Sunshine State of Florida. Thanks again, folks, for tuning in. And make sure to tune in next week only on Open Mic Night.